Haus Labs came out with 2 limited edition eyeshadow palettes, and I tried them out today for the first time on camera. These palettes were sent to me in PR, but this video is not sponsored. So in this video, I'm going to give you my first impressions of these palettes. We're going to swatch them both, and then I created one eye look with each palette, and at the end, I'm going to give you my final thoughts. So if that all sounds good, let's get started. Let's take a quick look at these palettes before I try them on my eyes for the first time. So these are limited edition palettes that have mattes, chrome shimmers, and bio glitter shades. They also claim that these shadows have skincare infused pigments such as plant squalene, hyaluronic acid, and vitamin E. When I first opened these palettes, I was really impressed with this packaging. It feels nice and like kind of heavy, and I think this mirrored packaging is so cute, but you will get fingerprints all over it. So this palette is the Super Neutrals Volume 1, and here is this palette all swatched out. When I was touching and swatching these shadows for the first time, they felt so much creamier than I expected them to feel. Like, just look at the pigment of these 2 shades right here. This is not me like really trying to build up a swatch, like that's how it's swatched. I also liked how they named the shades in the palettes. They are very straightforward. So going from right to left, we have the pink gold chrome, golden amber chrome, auburn chrome, light beige matte, sienna matte, and cocoa matte. I am very excited to put one of these shades all over my lid today. They look so pretty. And here are the shades in the Volume 2 palette, definitely more cool toned. I am honestly shocked by how well these shades swatched out. I mean, obviously it really depends on how they show up on the eyes, but just by the swatches, I'm already more impressed than I thought I would be. I really love the look of these 2 shimmers right here. This one kind of reminds me of the shade in the Anastasia Fall Romance palette, but formula-wise, it looks 10 times better. This is the shade I'm talking about. If you know, you know the shade swatched horrible, but this shade, ooh! I'm very happy I swatched these palettes first before applying them because I'm just even more excited to put them on my eyeballs now. So for this video, I'm just gonna play with one palette on each eye so I get a chance to use both of them. I'm gonna do the more cool tone palette on this eye because I wanna play with these shimmers right now. I did already prime my eyes and I just used the MAC Paint Chili paint pot, and then I set that with the translucent powder. I'm gonna start with this shade on a blending brush, and let's see how this shade applies in my crease. This shade is very, very light, and I am very, very fair today, but just off of that first dip into it, it's barely showing up. I'm gonna try to add more shadow, see if I can build this up even a little bit as just a slight transition shade. I definitely think they could have put a deeper shade instead of this one, because this is barely showing up on my pale skin tone. So if you are even my shade or deeper, like this might not really show up on you. So let's try this mauve-y brown. Let's try again in my crease. Okay, we're finally getting something, that's good. So I am swirling my brush into this powder, and I feel like not a lot is coming on the brush, which is kind of interesting. A lot of the times when you pick up a shadow, there's going to be some kickback that like comes up, and nothing's really coming up. I'm going to add more. Even this shade is really, really light, and this is my second time layering it up. I am trying to get a lot of product on my brush and like press it into my crease, but I'm just not getting... Not much is happening. I was feeling so excited after those swatches, but after putting these 2 shades on my eyelid, my happiness has gone down a little bit. I'm trying to decide which shimmer I want all over my lid. I love the tones of both of these. So I'm gonna take a dry lid brush with this Dusty Rose Chrome. I always like to see how it applies with the brush at first, even though I tend to use my finger with shimmery shades. Okay, so I have some on my brush there. Okay, not bad. Oh, this shade is just stunning though. I'm gonna switch to my finger. I love this color. That applied beautifully all over my lid. I'm gonna go back to my blending brush and just kind of slightly blend over that shimmer. I think it is very fitting that they call this a chrome. It is definitely a chrome. Now I'm going to take a pencil brush with this shade, and I'm going to run that across my lower lash line. Alright, since these two mattes were kind of disappointing, let's try the deepest one and see how dark this actually is. And I'm gonna go along my lash line. Alright, so definitely deepen things up. I'm liking how that is looking. I kind of want to see if I can do a little shadow wing with this. I'm going to take that deepest shade on a little angled brush. And I'm just going to continue that line from my lower lash line outwards to make my wing. The shadow is definitely working as a wing, but again, I'm having to build up the shade like 3 to 4 times to get it as pigmented as I want. I'm gonna run a little bit more of that kind of dusty rose color along my lower lash line. I just feel like I have to try this green shade, so I'm gonna take a little bit of it on my finger. I'm just gonna go right on this inner part of my lid. Now I'm gonna go in with a wet brush. Oh yes. I did get more fallout with that green shade, but now I'm just taking my little blending brush and blending along those edges again. I also brought that green shade a little bit farther down, kind of into my inner corner. Ooh, so this one is one of the Bio Glitter shades, and even though it is a green, it's like a super, super light olive green that kind of works as a little inner corner highlight. I went ahead and finished off this look with some mascara and lashes, and for my lashes, I'm wearing the Bright Lashes Daydream, and I cut them as like a little 3/4 lash just right out there. I did also stamp just a tiny bit of black shadow along my lash band to help hide it. I'm going to give my final thoughts of the palettes at the end of the video, but here is the final look with the Volume 2 palette. Now let's play with Volume 1 on this eye. So I think I want to do kind of the same style of eyeshadow look because I'm really just trying to play with the formula and the shades here, not really create the most extravagant look ever. So I'm going to start this look off the same way with that lightest matte shade on the blending brush. This shade also looks really light in the pan, so let's see how it shows up on my fair skin. Just to show you guys how I'm picking up this shadow, like I'm really trying to get my brush in this. Yeah, and just like with the other palette, the lightest matte shade is really not showing up on my pale, pale skin. That's honestly pretty disappointing. Well, let's try the Sienna matte. All right, give me some pigment. Alright, we got something here, so that's good. So even though that first shade doesn't really show up on my skin, I do really think it does help with the blending out of the shadows. So the shade is actually blending out really, really well, but again, it is kind of lighter than what I expected, so I am going to build it up. See if I can deepen up my outer crease maybe. I'm really liking this color, but this is an eyeshadow shade that I have in so many of my palettes because I do love a sienna shade like this. But I do gotta say, this formula is making my eyelid look very, very smooth, which is something that doesn't typically happen with eyeshadow. I think that might be the skincare ingredients in the shadow. So I'm just kind of building this shade up on the outer part of my eye, and I'm really happy with how this shade is looking and how it blended out. Let's try a little bit of the deepest shade on the tip of my blending brush, and I'm gonna lightly pack that on my outer lid, and then kind of do little circular blending motions. And I want to point out I have no fallout with these matte shades. I don't think I've ever used an eyeshadow formula that makes my eyelid look so smooth. This is different. I do want to blend a little bit along this harsh edge, so I'm going to go back to that lightest matte shade. And even though it might not really show up, let's see if I can use it to help blend. Yeah, a little bit. Now I have 3 gorgeous chrome shades to pick from. I either want to do this one or this one. I wish you guys could help me select. How do you pick? I think I'm going to do this one. I'm just gonna go straight in with my finger with this golden amber chrome. Wow, pigment on these is just wild. I am going to take a little bit of the Auburn Chrome and kind of place that in between the golden one and my matte shade. So kind of right out here. I am just more adding it to the entire outer half of my lid. So the inner half is the golden one, the outer half is the auburn one. I'm gonna go back to my blending brush and let's do a soft blend around the shimmers. Do have a lot of fallout on my face from those ones though, just wanted to point that out. Now I'm going to take a small firm blending brush with my sienna shade and I'm going to run that across the entire lower lash line. And then taking some of that deepest shade on the same brush and I'm placing that along the outer part of my lower lash line. I'm also taking a little bit more of that dark shade right on this very, very outer part of my eye, kind of connecting it to the lower lash line. Since I've used every other shade in the palette, might as well take the pink gold chrome. And I'm going to pop some of that in my inner corner. It's definitely showing up pretty pink on the eyes. I feel like in the swatch it looked really white. I went ahead and finished up this eye off camera again with the same mascara and lashes. And again, here are both looks all done. Now let's talk about my thoughts on these palettes. I kind of feel like I went through a roller coaster of emotions today with these little palettes. When I first saw these palettes announced, I wasn't really interested. I wasn't planning on buying them, but because I got them in PR, I thought it'd be a great chance to try out the formula since this is new to the relaunched Haus Labs line. So I wasn't super amazed at first. I also wasn't really wowed by the color stories just because this one leans a lot more warm. We've seen this color story before a million times. I do think the color story of the more cool toned one is slightly more unique, and I know that people are really liking these more cool tone palettes coming out recently. And then after I swatched these shadows, as you guys saw, I was super excited. I was like, oh my gosh, these feel so creamy and very pigmented, especially the chromes. And so when I put them on my eyeball, I was pretty disappointed when both of the light matte shades didn't really show up on my skin at all. But like I said, I think I can kind of notice those more skincare ingredients in it and how they really do smooth out the formula and how the shades look on your eyes. I do wish the matte shades were a little bit more pigmented, but that could also be a personal preference because these matte shades, you kind of have to build them up. I do think that makes it a beginner-friendly formula because you're not going to accidentally put on too much shadow. You really have to build it up to get the pigment you want. For me, that's kind of a disappointment, and I really had to layer up these matte shades to get them how they're looking right now. But these chrome shades are definitely the stars of the palettes. I kind of wish I could have one of these palettes with just the chrome shades as just beautiful lid kind of shadows. I do think it's a little disappointing how there's only one bio glitter and it's only in the volume 2 palette, where the volume 1 palette doesn't have any bio glitter. So I kind of wish they would follow the same format between palettes with 1 bio glitter, 2 chromes, and 3 mattes. I think that would be a perfect combo. So while I did have a lot of fun playing with this new formula and these new palettes, I don't really think there's something we need to go out and buy. And like I said, I would love to see them create a palette this size of just the chrome shadows or chromes and the bio glitters. But I am looking forward to see what other palettes they come out with in the future because like I said, these are limited edition. They might come out with more. I would love to know your guys' thoughts on these palettes and whether or not you're going to pick them up. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching and don't forget to like and subscribe.